It is all so worth it for me.
The little bottoms bouncing.
The utter mess. I would say unreasonably tricky.
So goodbye to the UK.
Right, UK.
You're in France.
Eaten a ton of really amazing food, loving life. This is life. We did it, we made it, we're here in France after all of the exertions and stresses of packing up our lives and leaving the UK for good. It feels so good to be settling into van life in France. We've officially left life as we know it behind as we embark on this adventure of 9 or more months traveling around Europe in this van as a family of 3, homeschooling from the road, running my business from the road, having all manner of adventures, we hope. Let's see. So we did it, we're actually doing it now, we're living this van life, and it's just about starting to feel real. Don't let my highlight reel fool you. It hasn't all been picturesque views and it hasn't been the smoothest settling in of periods. So there have been a fair share of exhilarations, yes, but also frustrations, particularly in our first week of van life. But before we get stuck in, I want to know from you, what kind of content do you want to see from me as we set off on this adventure? What are you most curious about? Are you curious about the practical aspects of what it's like to actually live in a van? Are you curious about homeschooling and how we're fitting that in, or running my business from the road? Or are you just here for the travel content? I want to know. Let me know in the comments below. I'm really curious and I want to share with you the things that you're most interested in. So let me get you caught up on the highs and lows of settling into our first ever proper week of van life. So when I left you in our last video, we had just had our first night in the van. After a couple of days kind of locally saying our goodbyes, we had to head over to Wales, rocking up pretty late in this absolutely idyllic and sweet little camp spot in a tiny, disused but beautifully maintained railway station. This was when it started to feel like proper van life for us. Waking up and sitting outside with my cup of tea was nothing short of blissful on this morning. So we were in Wales to get some all-terrain tyres and new alloys fitted to the van, but we went up early to make the most of Wales's spectacular countryside, managing to fit in some walks and even my very first van bake of some scones so that we could have a cream tea. Pretty sweet start to van life, if you asked me. Look at these adorable sheep. Aren't they just so cute?
The little bottoms bouncing.
So we spent the time that we had exploring the Welsh countryside. We went to this beautiful reservoir and went for walks around it. And we parked up for that night on Aberystwyth's seafront, appreciating the fact that we could do so for free. Then the next morning we had to go and get those tyres fitted, so we had a bit of a gorgeous drive through the countryside to go and do that. Wales was looking all moody and gorgeous. And there they are, the new tyres and alloys that we'd driven all that way for. But we weren't able to linger in Wales for too long because we had to make it to the other side of England, literally from the west coast of Wales all the way over to the east coast of England for our channel crossing. And we stopped just somewhere kind of random but rural and really pretty. Here's my morning tea. And as our crossing wasn't booked until the evening of the next day, my daughter and I spent a delightful day at Hever Castle. I was so excited to visit Hever Castle. I've been wanting to go there for at least 20 years, ever since I first read Philippa Gregory's The Other Boleyn Girl. And this home of the Boleyns did not disappoint. The house was so beautiful and the gardens and grounds were just so Pretty, with a maze, formal gardens, and so many roses. It was really interesting to read all about Anne's life. So we geeked out on all of the history and also loved the gardens and, of course, the gift shop. Got to hit up the gift shop. And that was it. Then we boarded the Channel Tunnel.
So goodbye to the UK.
Bye, UK.
Drove our van into a train, into a tunnel under the ocean. It's quite cool. And us being us, we enjoyed some beef stew that had been cooking along our journey in the slow cooker while we were crossing. That's kind of a bit weird maybe, but that's just what we're like. And at last we were in France. Now, what you didn't see in that footage there, and what I just didn't film, was the utter mess and chaos inside the van. So when we were struggling to leave our rented house and have the van finished, which you might have seen if you watched last week's video, because of all of that, we left in such a hurry that we just threw everything into the van. We had stuff everywhere. We hadn't had the luxury of time to find places for everything. I'd sorted the kitchen utensils more or less because I'd done a practice pack of that, so I knew where that was going, and our clothes were stored away because you might have seen my video preparing for that aspect too. But there was just so much other stuff that we knew that we would need, and we didn't know where we were going to exactly put it, and everything was just slung in the back of the van. So we were climbing on top of each other. There were boxes in the way. We kept bumping our heads as we adjusted to this new cramped, let's be honest, space, and it was just a little bit chaotic inside the van. So I just want to be sharing all of this dream life that we're living. Yes, it's been incredible. We've stayed at some amazing places already, seen some amazing things, eaten a ton of really amazing food. And the reality is that that first week of van life was a bit bumpy and rocky because we just didn't have time actually to sort the van out. So because we had this timeline that was dictated in terms of needing to get the wheels fitted on the van and also needing to get all the way from the west coast of the UK over in Wales all the way over to the other side to the east coast to make our channel crossing. Because of that timeline, we knew we weren't going to get time until we got to France and settled in to actually take everything out of the van and find good homes for it and put it back in. In addition to the mess, we also were lugging around a few materials and last-minute tools because there was some last-minute finishing touches that needed to happen. And again, we just needed the luxury of being able to put down somewhere, set up camp for a few days, and we didn't have that time until we were properly in France. So it was really quite a challenging time. It would have been lovely for those first few days of van life to be really relaxing, and don't get me wrong, they were amazing. We spent some incredible time in Wales. It's such a beautiful country, and we had the best time over in West Sussex and East Sussex and Kent in that area as well, but it was also super challenging. So back to our travels. Finally, it was time for our crossing, which felt like another milestone. Hurrah, praise be, we had made it to France at last.
We're in France.
France rewarded us with the most spectacular sunset, making our modest supermarket car park spot for the night feel like all kinds of luxury cast in this pink and amber glow. It had finally started to sink in. This is our life now. This is van life. So we got up the next day, all bouncy and full of the promise of adventure and probably the promise of French wine and cheese, and set off towards a lake. Our poor English constitutions were really struggling to acclimate to the warm summer temperatures here in France because we'd left behind a very damp, very chilly and slightly autumnal UK. So we were really hot and looking forward to a dip in the lake. All that was between us and the promise of that refreshment was filling the van with water so that we could shower, wash up, all of those kinds of things, and then we would be good. We'd be golden. We could park wherever we wanted then if we've got a full tank of water. So off we went. And that's when things became, I would say, unreasonably tricky. So that supermarket car park, which was actually very picturesque, which was very welcoming to campers, was so welcoming that it even had, I think there was an electrical hookup there, and water. So great, we thought we'll just roll over there in the morning, fill up, and off we go. Except we got there and there was a sign telling us that it was out of order. No matter, we thought we can look up another place en route, so we headed off in search of a tap. Only when we got there, this one had clearly been abandoned and had seized up and wasn't working at all. So we were like, well, okay, third time lucky, and off we went again to find another tap. Now, finding a tap doesn't sound, if you're not a van lifer, it might not sound like that big of a deal, but finding water that is safe and is free and is okay for us to hook up to and pump a significant amount of it into our tank isn't necessarily the easiest. So we were traveling several miles between some of these stops. So we rocked up to the third one. It all looked operational. There was some water around the bottom, which is a good sign. We've now found, we know these things now, means that somebody's been getting some water there. It was also card payment, so we didn't have to worry about coins and things like that. So, and it was at the edge of a campsite, so happy days. Looked like this was going to be a winner, third time's a charm. Except we couldn't quite get it to work. At first, the connectors weren't connecting our hose to its tap, even though we've got universal adapters. That wasn't quite fitting. Then we went through the card payment and it took forever to process, and then it said declined. We were like, well, that's weird. We've got plenty of money in that account. Well, let's try again. Declined. Let's try another card. Declined. Let's try another card. Declined. Let's try one of K-Van's because these were all mine. Declined. So we took the hint. This was not going to work out for us. I'm just going to move you a little bit. Okay, so where were we? The third tap had not worked. So back to our app that we use to find these places, researched another one, drove all the way there. By this point, it's taken several hours. So finally, at the fourth place, success, we managed to fill up our tank. However, this was starting to concern us because was this going to be how van life is going to shape up? Is it always going to be an ordeal to find a tap? We were kind of getting worried. In addition to that, because we'd spent so much time traipsing around between taps, driving from one service place to the next, we'd run out of time to sort out the mess in the van. So we were still stumbling over boxes, having to move 10 things anytime we wanted to do anything. So it wasn't ideal. But at last we made it to our park up for the night next to this lake. We pretty much had the place to ourselves. It was beautiful and we were really looking forward to diving in. Finally, with a full water tank, we headed off to our Lakeside Park up, hot and really very ready for a refreshing swim. Unfortunately, despite this idyllic setting, there was some problematic bacteria or something in the lake, making swimming prohibited. So I find that French wine fixes many problems. So a cold glass of Sauvignon Blanc was just the ticket as I edited a YouTube video and K-Van barbecued us some chicken, and we just spent a glorious evening looking out at the lake. The next morning, although I didn't entirely film it, was quite possibly the best morning of my year to date. Waking up as I did before the other two and being treated to the peace and tranquility of having this lake area entirely to myself. I did some yoga. My body was tremendously happy to stretch and let go of some of that built up tension. I did some journaling, looking out at the lake. And my journal that day was filled with nothing but gratitude. We're really doing it. We're living van life that morning by the lake. Totally dream life for me. I felt this complete sense of just calm and contentment settle on me after the frenetic and hectic last couple of weeks. It just sort of sunk in and felt really good. And that's what a morning routine will do for you. That's what a healthy dose of nature will do for you too, I guess. And that's kind of the whole point of this for me. Okay, well, not the whole point, because it's also about adventure and spending time as a family, but you know what I mean. Despite this being an extremely pleasant park up, we were still very warm and desperate for a swim, so we decided to move on the next day to somewhere hopefully swimmable. And the thing about van life that you can decide is either part of the excitement or an annoying uncertainty is whether or not your next park up will be what you want it to be. You could show up and find there's no space for you. You could show up and find that it's way less enticing than the photos on the app had made it out to be. But sometimes you hit the jackpot. You get exactly exactly what you wanted, and sometimes it's even free. We pulled up to this cozy little nook in the trees next to a lake in the Ardennes forest, and it did not disappoint. It was so tranquil and, best of all, swimmable. We were tired and hot, but when we took one look at this lake, we were so happy, and so it was a sunset family swim for us. So, here we are, the banks of the lake in the Ardennes forest, loving life. I said to K-Man, find me a park up with trees down to the lake. He delivered. I think my favourite thing so far about van life is the mornings though. Waking up, throwing something on, heading straight out into nature. This is what my soul has been craving this whole time, and it feels just so nourishing. That early morning light peeping through the trees, the call of the birds, the gentle lapping of the water. Oh, so good. Some time to just sit and be. I know it's an overused word, but I'm going there. This is bliss, genuinely. So, as we're starting to settle into van life now, and it's starting to finally sink in that this is life, at least for the next 9 months. This is that dream life that we'd designed and dreamt about and talked about. We're actually doing it now. Even though there have been some setbacks, and I think there just will be certain challenges of living and traveling, working, homeschooling from a van, it is all so worth it for me, and it has been really delightful to start to settle into that flow-based lifestyle. And any of the challenges that we've faced so far have been entirely worth it. I've been thinking a lot about, you know, the dream life, the title of this channel. And as it starts to unfold in front of us, as we actually start to settle into this way of life that we've intentionally created here, I really think that, yes, it's easy to find the feeling of the dream life in savouring the moment, savouring being out in nature. For me, that's part of the dream. Savouring seeing new places, that connectedness with each other, that connectedness with nature, the sense of adventure and freedom in those moments, in the savouring of those moments. It's easy to find the dream, but I think it's not just that. I think there's actually two aspects to it. The other part for me that I was thinking about the other day is that it's also about having a sense of agency, being able to come up with something that feels like just a dream and actually make it happen, actually live it, not just think about it, not just wish for it or hope for it, but actually see it come to fruition. There's really something special about that for me. You know, being able to do something that just feels so exhilarating to you, even if it's like outrageous to other people. For us, taking our daughter out of school for a year, selling our house and leaving the UK behind is really outrageous and a bit scary, but for us it's just so exciting. So to be able to set our minds to it and then now actually be doing it feels really satisfying. So the way I'm seeing it right now, at least from this park up in France as I sit here, is, to me, the dream life boils down to those two things. One is the actual savouring of whatever is your dream, being able to live it, find it in any moment, even before the next thing happens. So I recorded a video about maybe this is the dream life, the lead up, maybe it's the unfolding, maybe it's these moments where we can find the essence of whatever the dream is, not always at the end goal, not always at the outcome, but it is that savouring, I think, of a moment. So that's the one side of it, and I think the other side is having this sense of possibility, that you can do something a bit different, that your dreams are possible, and a sense of agency with that. So I think those, if you've got those ingredients, if you're able to savor the current moment and the gift that it is, and if you're able to recognize and truly feel a sense of possibility and agency, I think if you've got those two ingredients, you're living the dream life, my love. So next week, I think I'm going to be sharing with you how I've been getting on. I say I think because, you know, van life, not sure how these things will necessarily unfold. I think I'm going to be sharing with you how I've been getting on creating and putting in place a new morning mindset routine. If you've watched this channel before, you might know that my morning mindset routine is really important to me, but I've been having to find a way to fit it in and around van life and being in different locations frequently. So if that's interesting to you, then come along. And also don't forget to let me know in the comments, what do you want to see? What kind of things are you curious about? What questions do you have that I can answer? What do you want me to take you behind the scenes of as we embark on this adventure? Let me know. I really would love to hear. And until next time, my love, go and live your dream life. Bye for now.